The first thing I noticed when I walked into Salvatore's that morning was the scent, rich espresso mingling with freshly baked bread and something spicy that hung in the air like a warning. My fingers trembled as I tied my apron around my waist, the fabric worn thin from countless washings. 6 months at this upscale Italian restaurant on the edge of downtown, and I still felt like an imposter every time I pushed through those heavy oak doors. "You're late, Emma," Marco, the floor manager, hissed as he passed, clipboard clutched to his chest like a shield. His eyes darted nervously toward the kitchen, where something was clearly wrong. The usual rhythmic clatter of pots and pans had been replaced by an eerie silence punctuated by occasional whispers. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, tucking a strand of brown hair behind my ear. "The bus was—" "Save it." He cut me off, lowering his voice. "The boss is here," and he brought his son. My stomach dropped. In 6 months, I'd never seen the owner of Salvatore's, the man whose name hung above the door in elegant gold script. There were rumors, of course. The other waitstaff whispered that Salvatore wasn't just a restaurateur but something much more dangerous. Something that explained the black SUVs that sometimes idled outside and the way certain customers were treated with nervous deference. "His son?" I repeated, my voice small. Marco nodded, his usual bravado replaced by something close to fear. "Apparently he's been sick. They've been trying to get him to eat for days, but he refuses everything. They're in the private dining room." I swallowed hard. The private dining room was a sacred space at the back of the restaurant, separated from the main area by heavy velvet curtains. In my time here, I'd only served there twice, both times for men in expensive suits, who spoke in hushed tones and left tips that paid my rent for a month. "Just stay out of their way," Marco advised, his eyes darting toward the kitchen again. "Giovanni's been cooking special dishes all morning, and the boss is getting impatient." I nodded, grateful that my section was on the opposite side of the restaurant. I needed this job desperately. The tips barely covered my bills and the medications my mother needed, but it was all I had after dropping out of culinary school when Mom got sick. The morning passed in a blur of coffee refills and breakfast orders. I moved between tables on autopilot, my mind drifting to the stack of bills waiting on my kitchen counter and the increasingly desperate texts from my landlord. I was 2 months behind on rent, and his patience was wearing thin. It was just past noon when I heard the commotion from the kitchen. A crash, followed by raised voices. The few customers in my section looked up, startled, as Giovanni burst through the swinging doors, his chef's hat askew and his face flushed with anger or fear. I couldn't tell which. "He threw it against the wall," he exclaimed to Marco, who was frantically trying to calm him. "4th dish today. Nothing is good enough." Marco's eyes found mine, and for some reason I couldn't understand. His expression shifted from panic to calculation. "Emma," he called, gesturing me over with a sharp wave. "You went to culinary school, right?" My heart stuttered. I didn't finish. I had to. "But you know how to cook," he pressed, his tone leaving no room for modesty. I nodded reluctantly. Cooking had been my dream once, before reality had crushed it under the weight of hospital bills and responsibilities. "Yes, but—" "Good," Marco interrupted, already propelling me toward the kitchen. "Giovanni's done everything. Pasta, risotto, even brought in fresh seafood this morning. Nothing works. The kid won't eat. I don't understand what you want me to—" "Cook something," Giovanni snapped, his Italian accent thickened by stress. "Anything. I don't care anymore. The father is—" He trailed off, making a quick gesture with his hand that I didn't need translated. "Dangerous. The father was dangerous. The kitchen was a disaster, evidence of Giovanni's frustrated attempts scattered across countertops and the floor. My mind raced. What could I possibly make that would satisfy a child who had rejected a 5-star chef's offerings? "How old is the boy?" I asked, rolling up my sleeves automatically. 7, maybe 8, Marco replied, checking his watch nervously. "And we have 20 minutes before the boss loses what little patience he has left." I closed my eyes briefly, memories washing over me, my own childhood, punctuated by rare moments of happiness that always involved my grandmother's kitchen. The simple dishes she made when I was sick or sad. "Let me try something," I murmured, moving toward the refrigerator with newfound purpose. 15 minutes later, I stood over a simple dish of pasta with butter, the sauce a delicate blend of cream and chicken broth, light enough for a sick child's stomach but flavored with herbs that would open his appetite. On the side, I'd arranged slices of mozzarella cut into star shapes, a trick my grandmother had used to make me eat when nothing else worked. Marco looked dubious. "That's it? That's what you're sending out after Giovanni's feast was rejected?" I bit my lip, suddenly aware of the enormity of what I was doing. "It's what my grandmother used to make when I was sick. It's comforting." Giovanni threw up his hands in defeat, and Marco sighed heavily before taking the plate. "Your funeral," he muttered, pushing through the doors toward the private dining room. I held my breath, counting seconds that stretched into minutes. The restaurant had fallen quiet, as if every person inside was listening along with me. Then, the soft creak of the private dining room door opening. Marco's face appeared, his expression unreadable. He beckoned me with a single finger. My legs felt like lead as I crossed the restaurant floor, aware of every eye on me. When I reached the heavy curtain that separated the private dining room from the rest of the space, Marco leaned in close. "He ate it," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "All of it. And now the father wants to see you." The private dining room was dim, lit only by a crystal chandelier that cast dancing shadows across the deep red walls. My eyes took a moment to adjust, and when they did, I had to suppress a gasp. Seated at the head of a long mahogany table was the most intimidating man I had ever seen. Tall and broad-shouldered, with olive skin and piercing dark eyes that seemed to look straight through me. His black suit was impeccably tailored, the fabric clearly expensive, and a heavy gold watch gleamed on his wrist. This, then, was Salvatore, not just the owner of the restaurant, but, if rumors were to be believed, the head of one of the city's most powerful crime families. Beside him sat a small boy with the same dark eyes, his face pale but his cheeks now showing a hint of color. An empty plate sat before him, the star-shaped cheese slices gone. "You made this?" Salvatore asked, his voice deep and accented, each word precisely chosen. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "My son has been ill for 5 days," he continued, one large hand resting protectively on the boy's shoulder. "He has refused everything, the best chefs, the best doctors." He paused, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Yet he eats your simple pasta." "Why?" I swallowed hard, gathering my courage. "When I was sick as a child, my grandmother made this for me. It's not about complexity. It's about comfort." Something shifted in his expression. A subtle change I couldn't quite read. He leaned forward slightly. "Your name?" "Emma," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Emma Chen." "Emma," he repeated, the sound of my name in his mouth sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. "My son, Matteo, would like more stars." He gestured to the empty plate. Relief flooded through me. Of course, right away. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "You will make his meals from now on. Only you." It wasn't a request. I looked back at him, at the possessive way his hand rested on his son's shoulder, at the cool authority in his gaze that expected no argument. "I'm just a waitress," I said weakly. "I didn't even finish culinary school." A smile curved his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "And yet, my son eats your food when he rejects all others. That makes you much more than just a waitress, doesn't it, Emma Chen?" The way he said my full name made it sound like he was memorizing it, cataloging me among his possessions. I felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. "Tomorrow," he continued, "you will come to my home. Matteo needs to regain his strength, and clearly you have something that appeals to him." His gaze traveled over me slowly, assessingly, as if seeing me properly for the first time. "My driver will collect you at 7. I have shifts here," I stammered, searching for any excuse. "And my mother, she's ill. I can't leave her." Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Your shifts are no longer a concern. As for your mother..." He withdrew a sleek phone from his jacket pocket and spoke rapidly in Italian to someone on the other end, before returning his attention to me. "What is her condition?" The abrupt question caught me off guard. "Multiple sclerosis," I replied automatically. "She needs daily care and medications that insurance barely covers." He nodded once, decisively. This is no longer your concern either. A nurse will attend to her, and all medical expenses will be handled. My head spun with the casual way he rearranged my entire life in the space of seconds. Why would you do that? His smile widened, revealing perfect white teeth that reminded me of a predator. My son has not eaten properly in 5 days, yet he finished your meal and asks for more. This makes you valuable to me, Emma Chen. And I take care of what is valuable to me. The possessiveness in his tone was unmistakable. I wasn't being hired. I was being acquired. What if I say no? The question slipped out before I could stop it, hanging in the air between us like a challenge. For a long moment, Salvatore simply looked at me, his dark eyes unreadable. Then he gestured around the room, at the restaurant beyond, at the world itself. Look around you, Emma. At your struggling mother, at your unpaid bills. His voice was soft but edged with steel. Do you truly believe you have a choice? In that moment, I felt the invisible cage door swing shut around me. Whatever this was, this strange twist of fate that had placed me in Salvatore's path, I knew with bone-deep certainty that my life would never be the same. The boy, Matteo, looked up at me then, his eyes, so like his father's, filled with a child's simple gratitude. The stars were good, he said quietly. No one ever made me stars before. Something in my chest tightened, a strange protective instinct warring with my fear. This child needed me, even if his father terrified me. Tomorrow, then, Salvatore said, and though his tone was pleasant, the command was clear. 7 o'clock. As I backed out of the room, I caught one last glimpse of them, the dangerous father and his fragile son, both watching me with those identical dark eyes. One gaze calculating and possessive, the other trusting and hopeful. I had the unsettling feeling that I had just been caught in a trap of my own making, snared by a simple plate of pasta and star-shaped cheese. And there was no way out. That night, I barely slept. My small apartment seemed suddenly claustrophobic, the walls pressing in as I paced the worn carpet, trying to make sense of what had happened. My mother watched me from her adjustable bed in the corner of our living room, her eyes clouded with concern. You're going to wear a hole in the floor, Emma, she said, her voice thin, but still carrying that note of maternal authority I'd known all my life. Tell me what's troubling you. I sank onto the edge of her bed, the springs creaking beneath my weight. How could I explain that I'd somehow caught the attention of a man who was almost certainly a Mafia boss? That he'd arranged for her care with a single phone call, displaying the kind of power that both terrified and, if I was honest with myself, fascinated me. I might have a new job opportunity, I said carefully, taking her fragile hand in mine. Her fingers were twisted by disease, the skin paper thin. As a private cook, for a family. A family, she repeated, her eyes narrowing slightly. Mom had always been perceptive, even as her body betrayed her. What kind of family hires a cook after tasting one meal? I looked away, unable to meet her gaze. The kind that can afford to, I guess. She squeezed my hand with what little strength she had. Emma, look at me. When I did, her expression was serious. You've been carrying the weight of my illness for 3 years now. You gave up your dreams for me. If this job is what you want, take it. But if something feels wrong, a knock at the door interrupted her, making me jump. It was barely 6 a.m. Who could be here at this hour? When I peered through the peephole, I found myself staring at a woman in crisp medical scrubs, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. Behind her stood 2 men in dark suits, their postures alert and watchful. Miss Chen? The woman called through the door. I'm Nurse Winters, Mr. Salvatore sent me to care for your mother. My heart hammered against my ribs. He'd moved this quickly? I glanced back at my mother, who was struggling to sit up straighter. Curiosity etched across her face. With reluctant fingers, I unlocked the door. Nurse Winters swept in with brisk efficiency, followed by the 2 men carrying what looked like medical equipment. We'll need to do an initial assessment, she informed me, already moving toward my mother with a professional smile. And these gentlemen will be installing some upgrades to make Mrs. Chen more comfortable. Upgrades? I echoed weakly. The taller of the 2 men gestured to the boxes they'd brought. Hospital-grade bed, air purifier, monitoring equipment. Boss's orders. And who is this boss? My mother asked, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in months, her gaze sharp as it moved between the strangers invading our home. Before anyone could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I trust you've met Nurse Winters. She comes highly recommended. The men will also improve your security system. My driver will collect you at 6:30 this evening. Pack for a few days. A few days? I stared at the message, anxiety crawling up my spine. This was moving too fast, spiraling beyond my control. Emma? My mother's voice cut through my panic. What's happening? I looked up to find everyone watching me. The nurse with professional detachment, the men with blank expressions that revealed nothing, and my mother with growing concern. It's going to be okay, I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. These people are going to help you while I start this new job. My mother's eyes narrowed further, but she didn't press me in front of strangers. Instead, she submitted to Nurse Winter's examination with quiet dignity, while the men began unpacking their equipment. I retreated to my tiny bedroom, closing the door behind me. Sinking onto my bed, I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to still the trembling that had taken hold of my body. What had I gotten myself into? And yet, when I thought of Matteo's pale face lighting up as he ate my simple pasta, something inside me softened. A child was a child, regardless of who his father was. The day passed in a blur of activity. By afternoon, our modest apartment had been transformed. My mother had a state-of-the-art hospital bed, complete with remote controls and pressure-relieving mattress. A sleek monitoring system sat beside it, and Nurse Winters had arranged my mother's medications in a computerized dispenser. New locks had been installed on the doors and windows, and one of the men had mounted a small security camera in our entryway. Mr. Salvatore values security, he explained when he caught me staring at it. Or surveillance, I thought, but didn't say. At precisely 6:30, my phone buzzed again. Car waiting. I'd packed a small bag with shaking hands, unsure what to bring. Clothes for a few days, toiletries, the worn photo of my grandmother that I kept on my nightstand. As I kissed my mother goodbye, her eyes searched mine. Whatever this is, she whispered. Remember who you are, Emma. You are stronger than you think. I wasn't so sure about that, but I nodded, squeezing her hand one last time before heading for the door. The car waiting outside was not the black SUV I'd expected, but a sleek silver Bentley, its windows tinted so dark they appeared almost black. A driver in a crisp suit held the rear door open for me, his expression impassive. Miss Chen, he greeted me with a slight nod. Mr. Salvatore is expecting you. The interior of the car was all soft leather and subtle luxury. As I settled into the back seat, I caught a faint scent of expensive cologne. Sandalwood and something darker, more complex. The same scent I'd noticed clinging to Salvatore's suit the day before. We drove through the city in silence, moving from my working-class neighborhood into areas I rarely visited. Exclusive districts where trees lined wide streets and houses sat back from the road behind ornate gates. Finally, we turned onto a private drive that wound through meticulously landscaped grounds. The house that came into view took my breath away. House wasn't even the right word. It was a mansion, sprawling and elegant, its stone facade illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. Fountains played in formal gardens, the water sparkling in the gathering dusk. "We're here, Miss Chen," the driver announced unnecessarily, pulling up to a grand entrance flanked by marble columns. Before I could reach for my bag, the car door opened, and there stood Salvatore himself, tall and imposing in another perfectly tailored suit, his dark eyes assessing me as I stepped out. "Emma," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he was tasting it. "Welcome to my home." Up close, he was even more intimidating than I remembered. A thin scar ran along his jaw, visible only when he turned his head just so. His hair, black with threads of silver at the temples, was swept back from a face that might have been handsome, if not for the cold calculation in his eyes. "Thank you for arranging care for my mother," I said, finding my voice at last. It was entirely necessary. He cut me off, taking my bag from the driver with a casual strength that made the gesture more possessive than courteous. "Come. Matteo is waiting." He placed a hand at the small of my back to guide me up the steps, his touch firm enough to brook no argument but careful, as if I were something fragile and valuable. I was acutely aware of the heat of his palm through the thin fabric of my blouse, of how small I felt beside him. The entrance hall was a soaring space of marble and crystal, a chandelier the size of my entire apartment hanging overhead. Staff stood at attention as we passed. A butler, several maids, and men who didn't look like household staff at all, but rather like the security personnel who had visited my apartment that morning. "Your home is beautiful," I murmured, for lack of anything better to say. Salvatore's lips quirked in what might have been amusement. "This is just one of my residences. Perhaps you'll see the others in time." The casual presumption that I would remain in his orbit long enough to visit his other homes sent another chill through me. This wasn't a job offer. It was an acquisition. We passed through several richly appointed rooms, before reaching what appeared to be a residential wing. Salvatore stopped before a door carved with intricate patterns and knocked softly. "Matteo," he called, his voice gentler than I'd heard it before. "I've brought someone to see you." The door opened to reveal a slight woman in a nurse's uniform, her expression softening when she saw Salvatore. "He's had a good day, sir," she reported. "His fever is down, and he's been asking about the lady with the stars." Salvatore nodded, dismissing her with a gesture before ushering me into a child's paradise. The room was enormous, one wall entirely glass looking out over illuminated gardens. A custom bed shaped like a race car dominated one corner, surrounded by shelves laden with toys and books. A massive television was mounted on another wall, gaming consoles arranged neatly beneath it. And there, propped up against pillows in the race car bed, was Matteo. His color was better than the day before. His dark eyes, so like his father's, lighting up when he saw me. "You came!" he exclaimed, his voice high and clear. "Papa said you would cook for me again." Salvatore's hand pressed more firmly against my back, guiding me toward the bed. "I told you I would bring her, didn't I, Tesoro?" he said, affection evident in his tone. "Emma is going to stay with us for a while, to make sure you eat properly and get strong again." Matteo beamed at me, revealing a missing front tooth that made him look endearingly ordinary, despite his extraordinary surroundings. "Will you make stars again?" I couldn't help but smile back, my fear momentarily forgotten in the face of his childish enthusiasm. "I can make stars, and moons, and whatever shapes you like. I have a special kitchen prepared for you," Salvatore informed me, watching our interaction with those observant eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Anything you require will be provided." I turned to look at him, suddenly aware of how close he stood, how the scent of his cologne enveloped me. "I don't understand why you've gone to all this trouble. Surely your regular chef could learn to make what Matteo likes." Something dark flashed in his eyes. "My son has rejected food prepared by a dozen chefs. He eats what you make. That makes you irreplaceable." The word hung between us, heavy with implication. Irreplaceable. Valuable. His. "Emma will make dinner now, yes, Papa?" Matteo asked, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air between his father and me. Salvatore's expression softened as he looked at his son. "Yes, she will, and then perhaps she can read you a story before bed." His gaze shifted back to me, a statement rather than a question. I nodded, not seeing any choice but to agree. I'd like that. His smile was satisfied, like a man who has acquired something he's long desired. "Perfect. I'll show you to your kitchen, and then to your rooms. You'll find I've had some suitable clothes delivered for you. The ones you brought are—" His eyes swept over my simple jeans and sweater, his distaste evident. "Inadequate for your new position." My cheeks burned with embarrassment and a flicker of anger. "My clothes are perfectly functional for cooking," I protested. "You are no longer merely a cook, Emma," Salvatore replied, his tone making it clear the matter was not open for discussion. "You are a member of my household now. You will dress accordingly." Before I could respond, Matteo piped up. "Can she make chicken stars tonight, Papa?" Salvatore's expression changed again, the hard edges softening when he looked at his son. "Whatever you want, Tesoro. Emma is here to make you happy." I looked between them, the powerful father and the adoring son, and felt the weight of expectation settling over me. Whatever was happening here went beyond a simple job. Salvatore had decided I was valuable, and now I belonged to him in some way I didn't fully understand yet. As if reading my thoughts, he leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered, "Don't look so frightened, Emma. I take excellent care of what belongs to me. You'll want for nothing here." A shiver ran down my spine, not entirely from fear. There was something mesmerizing about him, about the absolute certainty with which he moved through the world, bending it to his will. "I don't belong to anyone," I whispered back, summoning what little courage I possessed. His smile was slow and knowing. "We'll see." As he guided me out of Matteo's room toward the kitchen he'd prepared for me, his hand never left the small of my back, a constant reminder of his presence, his control, his claim. And despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the sense of being trapped, I couldn't deny the strange thrill that ran through me at his touch, at the dark promise in his eyes when he looked at me. I was falling into something dangerous, something I didn't understand. But as we descended the grand staircase toward whatever fate awaited me, I realized that some small, reckless part of me wanted to see where this path would lead. The kitchen Salvatore had prepared for me was nothing short of extraordinary. Gleaming stainless steel appliances, marble countertops, and copper pots hanging from a rack overhead. It was the kind of space I had dreamed about during my brief time in culinary school. A far cry from the cramped corner of my apartment where I'd cooked simple meals for my mother and myself. Or even the chaotic professional kitchen at Salvatore's restaurant. "Is it to your satisfaction?" Salvatore asked, watching me as I ran my fingers along the cool marble surface. It's beautiful," I admitted, unable to hide my awe. He nodded, pleased with my reaction. "The refrigerator and pantry are fully stocked. If you require anything specific, provide a list to Maria." He gestured to a petite woman who had materialized silently in the doorway. "She oversees the household staff." Maria gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "A pleasure, Miss Chen." The way she looked at me, a mixture of curiosity and wariness, made me wonder what exactly Salvatore had told his staff about me. Before I could ponder this further, Salvatore continued, "You'll prepare Matteo's meals here, but you will dine with us. I wish to observe what my son eats, and I prefer to keep family meals intimate." The way he said, "family," sent another ripple of unease through me. I wasn't family. I was an employee, wasn't I? "Of course," I replied, focusing on the task at hand to calm my nerves. "For tonight, I should probably keep it simple since Matteo's still recovering. Chicken broth with tiny star-shaped pasta, and perhaps some lightly poached white meat chicken cut into stars as he requested." Salvatore watched me with those penetrating eyes, as if cataloging my every movement, my every expression. "You understand children." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I helped raise my cousins before." I trailed off, the memory of my previous life suddenly sharp and painful. "Before your mother fell ill," he finished for me, and I wondered how much he already knew about me. "You sacrificed your education to care for her." I turned away, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. "She would have done the same for me." "Loyalty," he murmured, the word heavy with meaning. "A rare and valuable quality." I busied myself examining the contents of the refrigerator, which was stocked with premium ingredients, organic vegetables, imported cheeses, meats from butchers whose names I recognized from the pages of gourmet magazines I used to flip through wistfully. "I'll leave you to your work," Salvatore said after a moment. "Maria will show you to your rooms afterward." He moved toward the door but paused, turning back to fix me with that intense gaze again. "Emma, understand this. Matteo is everything to me. His happiness and well-being are not negotiable. As long as you contribute to both, you will find me a generous patron." The slight pause before his last word hung between us, laden with unspoken implications. "And if I don't?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. His smile was cold and didn't reach his eyes. "Let's ensure that question remains theoretical, shall we?" With that, he was gone, leaving me alone in the cavernous kitchen with my racing thoughts. I threw myself into cooking, finding solace in the familiar motions of chopping, stirring, and seasoning. Working with such high-quality ingredients was a joy I hadn't experienced in years, and despite my circumstances, I felt a flicker of my old passion returning. For Matteo's meal, I prepared a delicate chicken broth with tiny star-shaped pasta I found in the pantry. I poached chicken breast with herbs, then carefully cut it into star shapes. On the side, I arranged sliced cucumbers into crescent moons and carved apple slices into more stars. Everything simple, light, but visually appealing for a child still regaining his appetite. Maria reappeared just as I was plating. Mr. Salvatore requests that you bring the meal to the family dining room yourself. I followed her through the maze of the mansion, carrying the tray carefully. The family dining room turned out to be a relatively modest space compared to the grandeur of the rest of the house. A round table with just 4 chairs in a warmly lit room with windows overlooking a garden illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. Matteo was already seated, wearing fresh pajamas printed with rockets and stars. His face lit up when he saw me. "Emma, you made stars." Salvatore sat beside him, his imposing presence somehow softened in this setting. He had removed his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt, revealing strong forearms marked with a few faded scars. I caught myself staring and quickly looked away. "It looks delightful," he commented, as I set the plate before Matteo. "You'll join us, of course." It wasn't a request. I slid into the chair opposite him, acutely aware of his eyes on me as Matteo eagerly dug into his meal. "This is even better than yesterday," the boy declared, devouring a chicken star with enthusiasm that made me smile despite my nerves. "I'm glad you like it," I said softly. "Tell me, Emma," Salvatore began, pouring deep red wine into a glass and pushing it toward me. "Where did you learn to cook?" I accepted the wine with hesitant fingers, taking a small sip to steady myself. It was richer and more complex than any I'd tasted before, probably worth more than what I used to make in a week at the restaurant. "My grandmother," I answered, the memory warming me from within. She was from Taiwan originally. She believed food was love made visible. "A wise woman," Salvatore murmured, his own glass raised slightly as if in tribute. "And your father?" The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. "He left when I was young. I barely remember him." Something flashed in Salvatore's eyes. Anger, perhaps, though not directed at me. A man who abandons his family has no honor. The conviction in his voice was absolute, and I glimpsed a core principle that seemed to govern his life: family above all. "Mama left too," Matteo said suddenly, his small voice piercing the tension. "She didn't want me." My heart clenched at the matter-of-fact way he said it, at the shadow of pain that crossed his young face. Salvatore's hand covered his son's immediately, protective and fierce. "Your mother was not worthy of you, Tesoro. Her loss is immeasurable." I watched their interaction, understanding dawning, a single father, fiercely protective of his motherless son. It didn't excuse what Salvatore was, whatever criminal enterprises he controlled, but it humanized him in a way that was both comforting and unsettling. "Do you have children, Emma?" Salvatore asked, his attention returning to me. I shook my head. "No, I've been too focused on my mother and work." "You would make an excellent mother," he observed, his gaze assessing me in that way that made me feel transparent. Patient, nurturing, creative. Heat rose to my cheeks at the unexpected compliment and the implications behind it. "Thank you," I managed, taking another sip of wine to hide my confusion. The rest of the meal passed in similar fashion, Salvatore asking questions that peeled back layers of my life while revealing little about himself, Matteo chattering happily between bites, and me growing increasingly aware of the strange intimacy developing between the three of us. By the time Matteo had finished his meal and was struggling to keep his eyes open, I felt both drained and oddly exhilarated, as if I'd passed some sort of test without knowing the criteria. "I promised to read him a story," I reminded Salvatore, noticing Matteo's drooping eyelids. "So you did." He stood, lifting his son into his arms with gentle strength. "Come." I followed them back to Matteo's room, where Salvatore tucked the boy into his race car bed, with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with the controlled power he exuded in every other setting. He pressed a kiss to his son's forehead, murmuring something in Italian that sounded like a blessing or a prayer. Then he straightened and turned to me. I have matters to attend to. Read to him until he sleeps, then Maria will show you to your rooms. After he left, I settled beside Mateo's bed with a book he eagerly pulled from his nightstand, a story about a young astronaut exploring distant stars. As I read, his eyelids grew heavier until he finally drifted off, one small hand clutching the edge of my sleeve. I gently extracted myself and turned to find Maria waiting silently in the doorway. "This way, Miss Chen," she said, leading me through another wing of the sprawling mansion. The rooms Salvatore had mentioned turned out to be a luxurious suite larger than my entire apartment. A sitting room with elegant furnishings opened onto a bedroom dominated by a four-poster bed draped with fine linens. A marble bathroom featured a soaking tub and shower with more settings than I knew what to do with. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of moonlit gardens, and in the distance, the glittering lights of the city. "Your belongings have been unpacked," Maria informed me, gesturing to a walk-in closet. "Mr. Salvatore has provided additional items he thought you might require." Curious, I opened the closet door and gasped. Hanging in neat rows were garments I could never have afforded. Dresses, blouses, pants, all in my size but made of fabrics that felt like liquid between my fingers. Designer labels I recognized from magazines, shoes arranged on illuminated shelves. "There must be some mistake," I stammered. "I'm just here to cook for Matteo." Maria's expression remained impassive. "Mr. Salvatore was quite specific about your accommodations and wardrobe. The items in the blue section are for cooking and casual wear. The black section is for evenings. The red..." Her eyes flickered briefly. "The red section is for special occasions." I glanced at the red section and felt heat rise to my face at the sight of silken garments that seemed designed for seduction rather than practicality. "If you require anything else, use this," Maria continued, handing me a sleek smartphone. "It's programmed with necessary contacts and has security features Mr. Salvatore insists upon for all household members." Household members, not staff, not employees. The distinction wasn't lost on me. "Mr. Salvatore wishes to see you in his study before you retire," she added, moving toward the door. 15 minutes. I'll return to escort you." Alone in the opulent suite, I sank onto the edge of the bed, trying to process the whirlwind of the past 24 hours. I'd gone from struggling waitress to... what, exactly? Private chef? That didn't explain the luxurious accommodations, the expensive clothes, the way Salvatore looked at me with that possessive intensity. The phone in my hand buzzed with a message. "Your mother is comfortable and sleeping peacefully. Medications administered on schedule. Will update again in morning." Nurse Winters attached was a photo of my mother, looking indeed peaceful in her new bed, surrounded by equipment that would monitor her condition through the night. Another reminder of the power Salvatore wielded and the golden cage he was constructing around me. 15 minutes later, I'd changed into one of the casual outfits from the closet, a simple but elegantly cut blouse and pants that fit me perfectly, raising more questions about how Salvatore had obtained my measurements. I followed Maria through the quiet mansion, our footsteps muffled by thick carpets. She knocked on a heavy wooden door, then left me standing there alone when a deep voice called, "Enter." Salvatore's study was exactly what I would have expected. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books lining the walls, a massive desk that emphasized the power of the man seated behind it. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the room. "Emma," he greeted me, rising as I entered. He had changed as well, into a black cashmere sweater that softened his appearance without diminishing his authority. "Come, sit. Would you like a drink?" I shook my head, already feeling off balance without adding alcohol to the mix. "No, thank you." He gestured to a leather armchair across from his own beside the fire, and I perched on its edge, unable to relax fully in his presence. "Matteo is asleep?" he asked, settling into his own chair with casual grace. "Yes." He barely made it through half the story. Salvatore nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "He ate well, thanks to you." "More than he has in a week. I'm glad I could help," I said carefully. "But I still don't understand why you've gone to all this trouble. The clothes, the suite, my mother's care. It seems excessive for a cook." His dark eyes studied me over the rim of his crystal tumbler. "You are not a cook, Emma. You are the person who brought my son back from the brink when doctors and specialists failed." He set down his glass, leaning forward slightly. "Do you know what it's like to watch your child refuse food day after day? To see him wasting away and be powerless to stop it?" The raw emotion in his voice caught me off guard. "No, I can't imagine. It is—" He paused, searching for the word. "Terrifying, even for a man like me, who has faced many dangers without flinching. A man like me." The understated acknowledgement of what he was hung in the air between us. "You've researched me, I assume," he continued, his tone matter of fact. "Or at least heard rumors." I swallowed hard, wondering how honest I should be. "People at the restaurant whispered that you were connected, powerful beyond just owning restaurants." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "A diplomatic way of putting it." He leaned back in his chair, regarding me with those penetrating eyes. "I control certain interests in this city. Business, real estate, entertainment. Some of these interests operate outside conventional legal frameworks." The casual admission should have terrified me, but instead, I found myself appreciating his directness. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want you to understand your position clearly." He steepled his fingers, his expression serious. "You have a unique ability to reach my son in a way no one else has managed since his mother abandoned us 3 years ago. That makes you invaluable to me, Emma. Not as an employee, but as an essential part of my household, of my family's well-being." The weight of his words settled over me. This wasn't a job offer. It was something far more complex and binding. "What exactly are you asking of me?" I whispered, my heart pounding against my ribs. Salvatore rose from his chair and moved to stand before me, his towering presence making me feel small and vulnerable. He reached down, his fingers gently tilting my chin up to meet his gaze. "I'm offering you a place in my home. Security for yourself and your mother. A kitchen where you can create without limitations. In return, you will care for Matteo, ensure he thrives." His thumb brushed along my jawline, the touch sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. "And you will remain under my protection." Protection. The word carried layers of meaning, of obligation and control. "For how long?" I managed to ask, fighting the urge to lean into his touch. His smile was slow and certain. "Let's not pretend this is temporary, Emma. You've seen what I can provide. You've felt the connection with my son. And," his voice dropped lower, more intimate, "you feel the connection between us as well, though you may not wish to acknowledge it yet." Heat bloomed in my chest, spreading upward to my cheeks. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was mistaken, but the intensity of his gaze seemed to strip away any possibility of deception. "I barely know you," I protested weakly. "That will change," he replied with absolute confidence. "Time is something I have in abundance." His hand moved from my chin to cup my cheek, the gentle possession of the gesture making my breath catch. "1 month," he said. "Stay for 1 month. Care for Matteo, cook in your beautiful kitchen. Let me show you the life you could have here. After that, if you wish to leave, I will not stop you. Your mother's care will continue regardless of your decision." It was a generous offer on the surface, far more generous than I had expected, and yet, I sensed the steel beneath the velvet. Salvatore was not a man accustomed to being refused. 1 month, I agreed, my voice barely above a whisper. His smile widened, satisfaction and something darker, more possessive flickering in his eyes. "Excellent." His thumb traced the curve of my lower lip, the touch so intimate it made my pulse race. "You should rest now. Tomorrow will be a full day." He stepped back, breaking the spell that had momentarily enveloped us. "Breakfast is at 7. Matteo will be eager to see what stars you create for him." I stood on shaky legs, nodding. "Good night, then." As I reached the door, his voice stopped me. "Emma." I turned to find him watching me, his expression unreadable in the firelight. "You made the right choice," he said softly. "I would have been most disappointed by any other answer." The gentle threat lingered in the air as I slipped out, making my way back through the silent mansion to my luxurious prison. In my suite, I changed into silk pajamas I found laid out on the bed, another item from the wardrobe Salvatore had prepared, and stood at the window, looking out at the city lights in the distance. Somewhere out there was my old life, my cramped apartment, the restaurant where I'd been just another anonymous waitress. Here, I was something else. Something valued, desired, and caged. As I slid between sheets softer than any I'd ever felt, I tried to tell myself I'd made a pragmatic decision. 1 month in luxury, ensuring my mother's care, cooking in a dream kitchen. I could endure anything for 1 month. But as sleep claimed me, Salvatore's face followed me into dreams. His dark eyes watching, his hands gentle yet possessive, his voice promising things I couldn't quite decipher, but that made my body warm with anticipation and dread in equal measure. I was falling into his world, and some treacherous part of me wanted to see how deep the rabbit hole went. Days melted into a week, then 2, in Salvatore's mansion. A routine emerged from the chaos of my new reality. Mornings spent crafting creative breakfasts for Matteo, whose appetite grew stronger by the day. Afternoons exploring the vast kitchen and experimenting with recipes I'd once only dreamed of trying. Evenings dining with father and son in that intimate family room, where the lines between employee and something more blurred with each passing day. Matteo blossomed under my attention, his childish enthusiasm for my star-shaped foods expanding to include moons, rockets, and eventually entire celestial landscapes crafted from fruits, vegetables, and carefully shaped proteins. His recovery was remarkable. The pale, listless boy I'd first encountered transformed into an energetic child who dragged me through the gardens to show me his favorite hiding spots, or begged me to watch him demonstrate his growing prowess at video games. "You've given him back his joy," Salvatore commented one evening as we watched Matteo race a remote-controlled car across the marble floors of the grand entrance hall, his laughter echoing off the high ceilings. I had forgotten what it sounded like. I glanced at him, caught off guard by the emotion in his voice. In these unguarded moments, when his attention was fixed on his son, I glimpsed the man beneath the menacing exterior, a father who would move heaven and earth for his child. "He's a wonderful boy," I replied softly. "Smart, curious, kind. You've raised him well." Salvatore's expression tightened slightly. "I've done my best," after his mother decided motherhood was less appealing than the modeling career I had apparently stunted. It was the most he'd revealed about Matteo's absent mother, and I treaded carefully. "Her loss." His eyes shifted to me, dark and assessing. "Yes, her loss indeed." That night, I found a small velvet box outside my suite door. Inside was an elegant gold bracelet studded with tiny star-shaped diamonds that caught the light when I moved my wrist. No note accompanied it, but none was needed. The gifts had started appearing around the 4th day. First small tokens left in the kitchen, imported spices, artisanal chocolates, then more personal items, a silk scarf in my favorite shade of blue, an antique cookbook with handwritten notes in the margins, a bottle of perfume I'd admired in a magazine once but never dreamed of owning. I knew I should refuse them, return each one with a firm reminder that I was here only to cook for Matteo. But each gift was so perfectly chosen, so aligned with my tastes and desires, that I couldn't help but wonder how much effort Salvatore was putting into understanding me. And then, there were the moments when our paths crossed in the mansion's corridors, his hand brushing mine as he passed me a glass of wine at dinner, his body close behind me as he reached past to open a door, his eyes lingering when he thought I wasn't looking. Each encounter charged with an electricity that both frightened and thrilled me. "You've cast quite a spell on the boss," Maria commented one morning as she helped me locate a particular spice in the massive pantry. Her tone was carefully neutral, but her eyes were sharp with curiosity. "I'm just doing my job," I replied, busying myself with examining a jar of saffron threads to avoid her gaze. She made a soft sound, something between a laugh and a snort. "In the 15 years I've worked for Mr. Salvatore, I've never seen him personally select a woman's wardrobe or give her the East Wing suite." She paused, then added more quietly, "or look at someone the way he looks at you." Heat rose to my cheeks. "You're mistaken." "I don't think so." Maria closed the pantry door, fixing me with a serious gaze. "Be careful, Miss Chen. Mr. Salvatore is complicated. When he wants something, he gets it, and he's decided he wants you. Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me with the unsettling confirmation of what I'd suspected but tried to deny. That evening, as I was finishing preparations for dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from Salvatore. Wear something from the red section tonight. Matteo will dine with Maria. We have matters to discuss. S. My pulse quickened. The red section of my wardrobe, the clothes Maria had described as for special occasions, had remained untouched since my arrival. I'd peek at them occasionally, running my fingers over silks and laces in deep crimson shades, but had never found the courage, or reason, to wear them. In my suite, I stood before the open closet, examining my options with trembling hands. I finally selected the most modest of the collection, a deep burgundy wrap dress with a neckline that hinted rather than revealed, the fabric clinging just enough to suggest curves without being overtly provocative. When I entered the smaller dining room, I found it transformed. The usual bright lights had been dimmed, replaced by the warm glow of candles scattered across the table. A bottle of champagne chilled in an ice bucket, and the usual place settings had been replaced with fine china I hadn't seen before. Salvatore rose as I entered, his eyes traveling slowly from my face down the length of my body and back again. He had exchanged his usual suit for a black shirt open at the collar and tailored pants that emphasized his powerful build. "You look beautiful," he said simply, coming around the table to pull out my chair. "Thank you," I murmured, acutely aware of his proximity as I sat, of the scent of his cologne enveloping me. "Where's Matteo?" "Having a Disney marathon with Maria." He returned to his seat across from me, pouring champagne into fluted glasses. "He was disappointed not to have dinner with you, but perked up considerably when I mentioned pizza and ice cream were on the menu." I smiled despite my nerves, imagining Matteo's delight. "You spoil him." "I do," Salvatore agreed without apology, handing me a glass. "Life is unpredictable and often cruel. I see no reason to deny him small pleasures when I can provide them." His words carried an undercurrent I couldn't quite decipher, a shadow of something that hinted at experiences that had shaped his worldview. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass in a toast. I hesitated only briefly before touching my glass to his. New beginnings. The meal that followed was exquisite. Dishes I hadn't prepared, presumably from the chef who managed Salvatore's formal entertaining. We ate and talked, the conversation flowing more easily than I would have expected, ranging from food to art to travel. Salvatore revealed glimpses of a cultured intellect behind his intimidating exterior, describing trips to galleries in Florence and theaters in Vienna with genuine passion. It was almost possible to forget who he was, what he did, in these moments where he was simply a man sharing his interests and experiences. "You're surprised," he observed, reading my expression with that uncanny perception. "That I can appreciate Caravaggio and discuss Puccini." I blushed, caught out. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" He waved away my apology. "Most people have a one-dimensional view of men in my position. They expect a crude, uneducated thug who solves problems with violence and thinks only of money and power." "And that's not you?" I dared to ask. His smile was enigmatic. "Violence is a tool, not a preference. Money is necessary, but ultimately meaningless beyond what it provides. Power?" He paused, swirling the wine in his glass thoughtfully. "Power is essential, but not for its own sake. For protection, for creating a safe world for those I care about. For Matteo," I suggested. "For Matteo," he agreed. "And for others under my protection." The way he looked at me made it clear I was included in that category now. As the meal concluded and dessert, a delicate panna cotta with fresh berries, was placed before us, Salvatore's demeanor shifted subtly, becoming more focused, more intense. "You've been here nearly 3 weeks now, Emma," he began, watching me over the rim of his glass. "You've settled in well. Matteo adores you. The staff respects your presence." "Thank you," I said cautiously, sensing there was more to come. "I told you when you arrived that I would give you a month before asking for your decision about staying permanently." He set down his glass, his dark eyes never leaving mine. But I find myself impatient, a quality I normally despise in others. My heart pounded against my ribs. What are you asking me exactly? Salvatore leaned forward slightly. I want you to stay, not just as Matteo's cook, but as a permanent member of this household, of this family. I set down my spoon, my appetite vanishing. I don't understand what that means. I think you do. He rose from his chair and came around the table, extending his hand to me. Come, I want to show you something. I placed my hand in his, allowing him to lead me from the dining room through corridors I hadn't explored yet. We ascended a curved staircase to a part of the mansion I hadn't visited before, finally stopping before a set of double doors. This wing has been closed since Matteo's mother left, Salvatore explained, producing a key from his pocket. I had no reason to use it until now. He unlocked the doors and pushed them open, revealing a stunning private suite that made even my luxurious accommodations seem modest by comparison. A sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the illuminated gardens and the city beyond. Through an archway, I glimpsed a bedroom dominated by an enormous bed draped in silk. Another doorway led to what appeared to be a private study, the mistress's wing, Salvatore said quietly, watching my reaction. Traditionally occupied by the lady of the house, the implication stole my breath. Salvatore, you belong here, Emma, he interrupted, his voice low and certain. Not in the guest suite, not as an employee. He took my hands in his touch gentle but firm. These past weeks have shown me what you are, what you could be to us, to me. I looked up at him, searching his face for signs of deception, manipulation, but found only intensity and something that looked remarkably like vulnerability. This is too much, I whispered, too fast. I barely know you. You know more than you think, he countered. You've seen me with my son. You've observed how I run my household, how I treat those under my protection. And I've watched you, your kindness, your creativity, your quiet strength. His hands tightened slightly on mine. We fit, Emma, in ways I didn't expect to find again after Matteo's mother betrayed us. The comparison to his former wife sent a jolt of alarm through me. I'm nothing like her. I'm not glamorous or sophisticated. You are everything she was not, Salvatore cut in, a flash of something dangerous crossing his features. Loyal, nurturing, genuine. He released one of my hands to cup my cheek, his touch surprisingly tender. And far more beautiful, though you don't see it yourself. My skin burned beneath his palm, a confusing mix of emotions flooding through me. Fear, attraction, disbelief, and something dangerously close to longing. I need time, I managed. This isn't what I expected when I came here. A smile curved his lips. What did you expect, Emma? That a man like me would bring a woman like you into his home and remain unmoved? That I would watch you care for my son, bring life back to my table and feel nothing? Put that way, it did seem naive. But still, your world is dangerous, I said softly. What you do, who you are. My world can protect you in ways you can't imagine, he countered. Your mother's health is already improved with the care I've provided. Your financial worries are gone. You cook in a kitchen most chefs only dream of. His thumb traced my lower lip, sending shivers down my spine. And you would have me, completely devoted to you and Matteo. A family. Family. The word echoed in my mind, stirring longing for something I'd lost when my grandmother died and my mother fell ill. Stability, belonging, security. I don't know what to say, I whispered truthfully. Salvatore's eyes darkened. Say nothing then. Let me show you instead. Before I could respond, he leaned down and kissed me, his lips gentle at first, then more insistent as I failed to pull away. And God help me, I didn't want to pull away. His kiss was intoxicating. Confident without being domineering, passionate without being crude. His arms encircled me, drawing me against the solid warmth of his chest, and I found myself responding, my hands sliding up to his shoulders. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless, my thoughts scattered like stars across a midnight sky. Tell me you felt nothing, Salvatore challenged softly, his forehead resting against mine, and I will never touch you again. I couldn't lie. Not to him, and certainly not to myself. I felt something. but this is all happening so fast. He stroked my hair back from my face with surprising tenderness. We have time. I've waited this long to find someone worthy of standing beside me, of helping raise my son. I can be patient a while longer. The way he looked at me, as if I were precious, irreplaceable, made my heart ache with a confused longing. No one had ever looked at me that way before. I should check on Matteo, I said, needing space to think, to breathe without the intoxicating scent of his cologne clouding my judgment. Salvatore nodded, releasing me reluctantly. Of course. He brushed a final kiss against my temple. Think about what I've said, Emma, about what I'm offering. Not just luxury, but belonging, protection, family. As I moved toward the door, he added, and Emma, when I turned back, his expression was serious, almost vulnerable. I don't make such offers lightly, or often. I nodded, understanding the significance of what had just transpired. This powerful, dangerous man had just laid his heart bare, at least as much as someone like him could, and despite everything, the speed, the circumstances, my lingering doubts about his world, part of me wanted to accept. That night, I lay awake in my luxurious bed, my fingers absently tracing the star-shaped diamonds on the bracelet he'd given me. Through my window, I could see the city lights twinkling in the distance like a galaxy just out of reach. My old life seemed impossibly far away now, fading like a dream upon waking. My phone buzzed with the nightly update from Nurse Winters. Your mother had a good day. The new treatment Dr. Morris prescribed is showing positive results. She asked about you. I told her you were doing well in your new position. Attached was a photo of my mother sitting up in her bed, color in her cheeks I hadn't seen in months, a book open on her lap. She looked better than she had in years. Another message followed almost immediately, this one from Salvatore. Sleep well, Emma. I find myself counting the hours until breakfast. Such a simple message, yet it sent warmth spreading through my chest. Was this what it felt like to be wanted? Not just desired, but truly valued? I closed my eyes, remembering the feel of his lips on mine, the strength in his arms as he held me, the way he looked at me as if I were the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. 1 week remained of my promised month. 1 week to decide if I would step fully into Salvatore's world, with all its danger and luxury and intensity. 1 week to determine if what I felt in his presence was real, or merely the product of circumstances and his overwhelming charisma. But as I drifted toward sleep, one truth became increasingly clear. I was already far deeper than I had intended to go, and the thought of leaving this place, this life, this man and his son, created a hollow ache in my chest I wasn't sure I could bear. The final days of my promised month unfolded like scenes from a dream I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to wake from. Matteo's health had fully returned, his appetite robust, his energy boundless. Each morning he bounded into the kitchen while I prepared breakfast, eager to see what shapes I'd created for him, his delight in the simplest things infectious. Emma, will you stay forever? He asked one afternoon as we sat in the garden, watching butterflies flit between late-blooming flowers. The autumn air carried a crisp edge, but the sun was warm on our faces. I looked down at his hopeful expression, at those dark eyes so like his father's, and felt my heart constrict. Would you like me to stay? He nodded emphatically. Papa smiles now. He didn't smile before you came. Such a simple observation, yet it carried the weight of truth. Salvatore had changed in subtle ways since my arrival, the hard edges of his demeanor softening when we were together, moments of genuine warmth breaking through his controlled exterior. After our kiss in the mistress's wing, he had been true to his word, giving me space to think. But his presence was a constant, magnetic force. His hand at the small of my back as we walked through the gardens, his eyes finding mine across rooms, the brush of his fingers against mine when he passed me a glass or a book. Each touch deliberate, each glance a question I wasn't yet ready to answer. On the evening of my 25th day in the mansion, as I was putting the finishing touches on a dessert for our dinner, my phone rang. I froze when I saw the caller ID, Nurse Winters. Hello? I answered, anxiety immediately clutching at my throat. Miss Chen, please don't be alarmed, she began, her professional tone tinged with urgency. Your mother has experienced some difficulty breathing. We've stabilized her, but Dr. Morris believes she should be evaluated at the hospital as a precaution. The whisk I'd been holding clattered to the counter. I'll come right away. Which hospital? St. Vincent's. We're en route now in the medical transport, mister. Salvatore arranged for emergencies. Of course he would have thought of that. The man who left nothing to chance, who prepared for every contingency. I ended the call just as Salvatore appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. Concern etched across his features. What's happened? My mother, I explained, already untying my apron with trembling fingers. She's being taken to St. Vincent's. I need to go to her. Without hesitation, he pulled out his phone. Antonio will bring the car around. I'll come with you. You don't have to. I do, he interrupted firmly. You're upset. You shouldn't be alone. Before I could protest further, he was guiding me through the mansion, his arm around my shoulders, providing a steadiness I desperately needed. Within minutes, we were in the back of his sleek Bentley, speeding toward the city with a driver who seemed to know exactly which traffic laws could be bent in service to his employer's wishes. Salvatore held my hand throughout the journey, his thumb stroking soothing patterns across my skin. He didn't offer empty reassurances or platitudes, just the solid comfort of his presence. At the hospital, doors opened for him. Staff jumped to attention, and we were escorted to a private waiting area while my mother was being examined. I paced the small room, anxiety making it impossible to sit still. What if she's worse? What if the treatments haven't helped as much as we thought? What if... Salvatore caught me mid-pace, his hands gentle but firm on my shoulders. Emma, look at me. I raised my eyes to his, finding an unexpected softness there. Your mother is receiving the best care possible. Dr. Morris is the top specialist in the country for MS. If there is anything to be done, it will be done. I promise you this. The certainty in his voice calmed something in me, reminding me that I was no longer alone in caring for my mother, in carrying the burden of her illness. Thank you, I whispered, leaning into him almost unconsciously. His arms encircled me, strong and protective, and I allowed myself to draw comfort from his embrace. We remained that way until a doctor entered, a distinguished man with silver hair and a kind face who introduced himself as Dr. Morris. I straightened immediately, bracing for bad news. Miss Chen, he began, his tone reassuringly calm. Your mother experienced what we call a pseudo-exacerbation, temporary worsening of symptoms triggered by a slight fever from a minor infection. We've started antibiotics and her breathing has already improved. Relief washed over me in a dizzying wave. So she'll be okay? More than okay, he replied with a small smile. Despite this setback, the new treatment protocol is showing remarkable results. The latest MRI shows significant reduction in active lesions. He glanced at Salvatore. The experimental medication you arranged access to is performing exceptionally well. I turned to Salvatore, confused. Experimental medication? Something like guilt flickered across his face. I made some calls to connections in the pharmaceutical industry. Your mother was added to a trial that showed promising results in similar cases. You didn't tell me, I said softly, not accusingly, just surprised by yet another way he had intervened in my life. In my mother's life. I didn't want to give you false hope, he explained. And I wanted to be sure it was helping before I mentioned it. Dr. Morris cleared his throat discreetly. Your mother is asking for you, Miss Chen. She's in room 412, a private suite. She should be able to return home tomorrow if all remains stable. Thank you, doctor, Salvatore said, his tone making it clear the conversation was concluded. As the doctor left, I turned fully to Salvatore, studying his face in the harsh hospital lighting. You arranged experimental treatment for my mother without telling me. He met my gaze steadily. Yes. Why? His answer was simple, direct. Because she matters to you, and you matter to me. The honesty in his voice, in his eyes, broke something open inside me, a last barrier of resistance I'd been maintaining against the tide of emotions he evoked. I need to see her, I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. Salvatore nodded. Of course. I'll wait here. I found my mother in a room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than a hospital room. Plush chairs for visitors, tasteful artwork on the walls, a window with a view of the city skyline. She was propped up on pillows, looking tired but far better than I had feared. "Emma," she greeted me, extending her hand. "You didn't need to rush here. They're making a fuss over nothing." I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. "Breathing difficulty isn't nothing, Mom." She waved dismissively with her free hand. "A little shortness of breath, that's all. This new treatment has me feeling better than I have in years, despite today's hiccup." She studied my face. "You look different." I blushed under her scrutiny. "Different how?" "Healthier. More vibrant." Her eyes narrowed shrewdly and conflicted. "This job is more than just cooking, isn't it?" I should have known I couldn't hide anything from her. "It's complicated." "It's that man, the one who arranged all this." It wasn't a question. "Nurse Winters mentioned he owns half the city, and the other half is afraid of him." "Mom, I'm not judging, Emma," she interrupted gently. "I just want to understand. You've been so vague in your messages, talking about the kitchen and the boy, but never explaining why a man like that would go to such lengths for a cook." I took a deep breath, deciding honesty was the only path forward. "He wants me to stay permanently, not just as Mateo's cook, but as his lover?" she asked bluntly. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "Nothing's happened. Not really. But yes, I think that's part of it." She was quiet for a moment, considering. "And what do you want, Emma?" The question hit me like a physical blow. What did I want? I'd spent so long subordinating my desires to necessity, dropping out of school to care for her, working jobs I hated to pay bills, putting my dreams on hold indefinitely, that I barely recognized the concept of wanting something for myself. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me thinks this is insane. He's dangerous, Mom. The things he does, the power he has." I trailed off, remembering how doors had opened for him at the hospital, how staff had snapped to attention at his arrival. "And the other part?" she prompted. "The other part feels alive around him, seen, valued." I looked down at our clasped hands. "Mateo is wonderful, sweet and bright and so eager for affection. And Salvatore is complicated. But there's something real beneath all the power and control. When he looks at me, I feel like he's seeing something no one else has ever noticed." My mother squeezed my hand. "You know, your father looked at me that way once, like I was a revelation." I stiffened slightly. She rarely spoke of my father, the man who had walked out when I was too young to form lasting memories of him. "Before he left, you mean?" I said quietly. She smiled sadly. "Yes, before that." Love doesn't always last, Emma. But that doesn't mean it isn't real while it exists. Are you saying I should accept? Move into a Mafia boss's mansion and become what? His mistress? His wife? I'm saying you should listen to your heart for once, instead of your sense of obligation or practicality. She reached up to touch my cheek. "You've sacrificed so much for me. Maybe it's time you chose something for yourself, even if it's complicated, even if it's dangerous." I leaned into her touch, tears threatening. "What if I make the wrong choice? Then you'll deal with the consequences, just as you've always done." Her voice grew softer. "But Emma, watching you deny yourself happiness year after year has been its own kind of pain for me. This man, whatever else he may be, makes you feel something. I can see it in your eyes." Before I could respond, a soft knock at the door announced a nurse with medication. I kissed my mother's forehead, promising to return the next day when she would be discharged. In the waiting room, I found Salvatore standing at the window, his powerful silhouette outlined against the city lights. He turned as I entered, his expression questioning. "She's doing better," I assured him. "Thank you for everything." He nodded, studying my face. "You've been crying." I touched my cheek, surprised to find it damp. "Just emotional, I guess." Salvatore moved closer, his hand reaching up to brush away a tear I'd missed. "Let me take you home." Home. The word resonated strangely. Not my apartment, but his mansion. When had I started thinking of it as home? In the car, we sat in comfortable silence, the events of the evening having shifted something between us. As we passed through the city toward the winding road that led to his estate, I found myself studying his profile in the passing lights. The strong jaw, the straight nose, the hints of silver at his temples that somehow enhanced rather than diminished his magnetism. "You're staring," he observed, his voice tinged with amusement. I didn't look away. "I'm deciding." His eyes met mine, understanding dawning. "About staying." "Yes." We lapsed into silence again until the car pulled through the gates of the estate, gravel crunching beneath the tires. When we stopped at the entrance, Salvatore dismissed the driver with a nod. "Walk with me," he said, offering his hand. I took it, allowing him to lead me through the gardens now lit by subtle landscape lighting. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of late roses and the earthy aroma of fallen leaves. We stopped beside a small fountain where water trickled musically over carved stone. "When Matteo was born," Salvatore began unexpectedly, "I promised myself I would give him everything: security, opportunity, love. Things my own father never provided." He turned to face me, still holding my hand. When his mother left, I thought I had failed him somehow, that I hadn't been enough. The vulnerability in his admission caught me off guard. "You're a good father, Salvatore. I try to be." His thumb stroked across my knuckles. "But something was missing until you came. You brought light back into this house, Emma, into our lives." He stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup my cheek. "I know what I am. The things I've done. The world I inhabit. I wouldn't ask you to enter it blindly." "I know enough," I whispered. "Do you?" His eyes searched mine. "I have enemies. My business is often dangerous. The protection I offer comes with its own price. A cage, even a golden one, is still a cage," I said softly. He nodded, a sad smile touching his lips. "Yes, but every choice in life carries constraints, Emma. Your devotion to your mother has been its own kind of cage, has it not? Poverty, its own prison?" I couldn't deny the truth of his words. "I'm offering you a different kind of life," he continued. "One with luxury, yes, with protection and privilege, but also with challenges uniquely its own." His gaze intensified. "I'm offering you a family, myself, Matteo. A place where you belong completely." I thought of my mother's words, of the way Matteo's face lit up when I entered a room, of the dreams I'd abandoned and the new ones that had begun to form in this strange, unexpected chapter of my life. "If I stay," I began carefully, "I need to know it's real, not just gratitude because I helped your son, or fascination that will fade once the novelty wears off." Salvatore's expression softened with something that looked remarkably like tenderness. "Emma Chen, I have commanded respect, inspired fear, and purchased loyalty throughout my life. But in you, I've found something I cannot demand or buy: genuine care for my son, understanding of the man beneath the power, and a spirit that both challenges and complements my own." He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against my palm that sent warmth cascading through me. "Is that real enough for you?" In that moment, standing in the moonlight with this dangerous, compelling man, I made my choice. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us, and raised my face to his. "Yes," I whispered against his lips. "It's real enough." His kiss was possessive yet tender, claiming yet giving. His arms encircled me, drawing me against the solid warmth of his chest, as if he would never let go. And perhaps he wouldn't. This man who held on to what he valued with unwavering determination. When we finally broke apart, his dark eyes gleamed with satisfaction and something deeper, more profound. "Welcome home, Emma." And in those words, I found my answer. Home wasn't a place, not my childhood house with my grandmother's kitchen, not the apartment I'd shared with my mother, not even this palatial estate with its gardens and fountains. Home was where you were seen, valued, and chosen, where you belonged. In Salvatore's arms, with Matteo's future stretching before us, I had found mine.